In the last lesson, you dove headfirst into the popular directory service, Active Directory. You learned how to add users, password, groups, and even modify access level for groups using group policies. Another popular directory service that's used today is the free and open source service openldap, which stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, operates very similar to Active Directory. Using LDAP notation or LDAP data interchange format or LDIF, you can authenticate, add, remove users, groups, computers, and so on in a directory service. OpenLDAP can also be used on any operating system, including Linux, Mac OS, even Microsoft Windows. However, since Active Directory is Microsoft's proprietary software for directory services, we recommend that you use that on Windows instead of OpenLDAP. But it's helpful to know that OpenLDAP is open source, so it can be used on a variety of platforms. There are a few ways you can interact with an OpenLDAP directory. First, you can use the command line interface and pass in commands to create and manage directory entries. You can also use a tool like PHP LDAP admin, which offers you a web interface that you can use to manage your directory data, much like the Windows Active Directory GUI that you're familiar with. You can read more about how to set up OpenLDAP and PHP LDAP admin in the next reading. In this lesson, we'll give you a high-level overview of the operations you can do in OpenLDAP via commands and how they work. To begin, we'll just open the OpenLDAP package using this command. I want to get into my Linux environment and type up this command: sudo apt get install slap d ldap utils. Put my password in and accept. Once you install the packages, it'll prompt you to enter in an administrator password for LDAP. So let's go ahead and do that. And then hit OK. Then confirm your password. Then hit OK. Now that it's installed, we're actually going to reconfigure the slapd package so that we can fine-tune our setting. To do that, we're going to run the following command. I want to clear my window and then run sudo dpkg reconfigure slapd. This is going to ask us a bunch of questions about our new setup. We won't cover all of these options, but you can learn more about them in, you've guessed it, the supplemental reading. For now, let's just fill out the settings with these values. So the first option is omit OpenLDAP server configuration. I'm going to go ahead and say no. Next, DNS domain name. It's similar to Windows AD. This is our organization domain. Let's use example.com. And then hit OK. Organization name. Let's use example. Administrator password. Let's do the same thing that we entered before. For the database, let's use MDB. Do you want the database to be removed when slapd is purged? Let's go ahead and say no. Then it's asking us if we would like to move the old database. We're going to say yes for now. And then it'll say allow LDAP version 2 protocol. I'm going to say no. That's it. Now you have a running open LDAP server. We're really cooking now. Let's keep going. It's easier to manage OpenLDAP through a web browser and tool like PHP LDAP admin. But you can also use command line tools to achieve the same result. I'd recommend you look into setting up PHP LDAP admin if this is your first setup with OpenLDAP. For instructions about how to set up PHP LDAP admin, check out the supplementary reading. In this lesson, we're going to quickly run down a few of the commands that will allow you to add, modify, and remove entries in your directory. To begin using command line tools, you need to use something known as LDIF files, pronounced LDIF. We've already seen LDIF format or LDAP notation in action. It's just a text file that lists attributes and values that describe something. Here's a simple example of an LDIF file for a user. Even without understanding what the syntax of this file is saying, we can infer that it's talking about an employee named Cindy who works in the engineering department of the company, example.com. We've talked a little bit about what the attributes are referring to in an earlier lesson, but you can refer to the supplemental reading if you want to know what the specific fields mean. For our purposes here though, we just want to see a high-level overview of how this works. Once you've written your LDIF files, you're practically done. Depending on what task you want to do to your directory, you'd run commands like these. ldap add. This takes the input of an LDIF file and adds the context of the files. ldap modify. As you can guess, this modifies an existing object. ldap delete. This will remove the object that the LDIF file refers to. ldap search. This will search for entries in your directory database. It's not important to know the syntax of these commands. You can always look up the syntax on official documentation. But as you can see, it's not scary to work with openldap. It operates in a very similar way to Windows Active Directory or AD. You can take this knowledge and populate your directory just like you did in Windows AD. If you're curious about the syntax of these commands, check out the supplemental reading on using LDIF files and LDAP commands. Again, if you're considering openldap as your solution to your directory service needs, I'd recommend looking into the web manager tool PHP LDAP admin that we've included a link to in the next reading. Just like Windows AD, this topic can be pretty extensive, so think about which directory solution best fits the IT needs for your organization. There are lots of reasons why you might want to deploy the help of a directory service like openldap or Active Directory while working in a systems administration role. Directory services are great for centralized authentication, keeping track of what computers are in your organization, who can access them, and more. Make sure to play around and familiarize yourself with openldap or PHP LDAP admin to get a better sense of how these directory services work. Checking out the official documentation is always a good place to start. By now, you've learned about all the essential IT infrastructure services. The next topic we'll shift to is how to make sure all the hard work you put into your IT infrastructure doesn't go to waste by learning about disaster recovery and backups. Your hard work is really paying off. High five to that. Now, take a moment to complete the quiz we put together for you. Then we'll meet you back in the next video.